So after the long string of videos and their subject matter lately about my father's suicide, I think it's a good time to set a context and everything else of that time, like what was going on. So I was in a mental hospital. It was my first stay ever. And I remember begging my father to let me go. I know I was crying when I just wanted help so bad. And he seemed quite reluctant. And looking at it now, I think it was because he was an engineer and he solved problems. And either he wasn't able to solve this problem, and that made him reserve, or the truth may come out in a setting like this where there may be a new safe zone where what was going on behind doors would be brought to light. I think it's something like that. So I was in there for a little bit before Dad did his deal. I would say I was in 2 or 3 weeks in treatment. And I can't tell you the exact frequency, but I remember my dad coming to visit me. I feel like it was maybe like a Wednesday mornings and then in the mornings on Saturday. And that was pretty much like clockwork. I mean, enough that you could kind of rely on it or count on it. I don't ever remember my stepmom going, but she could have. That I don't know. I do know there's some video, I guess. I'm still going to try to obtain that of me in the hospital there. It's kind of like a doggone resort, to be quite honest. But so anyway, I was in there. And I remember the particular day and my, wow, as I'm talking this out, I'm actually starting to put pieces together. I think they could be inaccurate, but they could also be accurate. In the image that you, or the video that you guys would have seen, I don't know if it was part one or part two. One of the children there, unless I'm wrong, looked like he was wearing his Cub Scout uniform. And if he had that on, more than likely that was Wednesday night. That's when Cub Scouts would have been. And it probably would have made sense that he was still at home because of all the excitement that you saw in that video. I can't really tell you, but another piece, I mean, I could look it up the day he died and figured out what day of the week it was. But the other thing that makes me think that it was a missed Wednesday morning visit, because I do remember that we watched the nightly news, and we were supposed to discuss it and whatnot in this group before we went to supper, and we did that every weekday. So I know that was taking place, that night. So if I had to lean just from those two pieces of information, I would say it was Wednesday. But I'll go looking. I'm getting curious now. So anyway, that's where I was. Dad did not show up, which was highly, highly unlike him. He did not show up. No communication or nothing. Just it was just abnormal, and he didn't show up, and it's just what it was. No call, no nothing. And there's a lot more of the story from my side, my evening surrounding these events. And I will do that in a separate video. I'm not going to include that because this video is about his deal. So one of the kids was also gone. Of us four, I was in the hospital. My little sister was home, I know for sure. I don't know about the other children. One child was not, as far as I know, because he was in Missouri, I think, was staying with his grandpa, but I believe he was flying in that day. So I don't know what that looked like in all this chaos. So I don't know if he was just got home are what. But as far as the details that I can remember and have heard from other people, the only one that I know was there was my sister, my stepmother, and my father at the time of it. And Dad had actually bought, I saw this from receipts. Dad had actually bought the gun like the day earlier because Dad did not believe in guns at all. And he bought it at a pawn shop, and it was the receipt and everything like that. And there's like 2 boxes. That was really strange. There was like 2 boxes of bullets, but yet one whole box was missing, could not be accounted for. Nobody knows. Maybe went out to the desert and practiced. Maybe went to a shooting range and practiced. We don't know. But one whole box of ammunition was completely missing. And he only took so many bullets out that he was working with, because when I had found or whatever, I think it was underneath the seat of the minivan or something. There was very few bullets missing out of the remaining thing. That doesn't mean he wasn't fully. I don't know. Maybe he's fully loaded on this revolver, and it included bullets from the other box. I don't know. Anyway, he bought the gun the day before, and as far as I know and have been told, the way it went was they were both in their master bedroom retreat side of the house, and the door was shut and locked. And that's how it was all day. The story goes, according to my mom, according to, my stepmom, and maybe even the police report, is my dad threatened her that if she was to leave the room, that he would kill her. And so this kind of torment, I believe, from what it is all day, was kind of like, well, I'm going to kill me, or I'm going to kill you, and then me. There was just great uncertainty, and it was quite heated as it went through the day. It was really kind of quite a sad deal. Well, I guess we just get into it. I think I did share some details of this I in another video, so I won't, I did it in my gun, the one I talked about with guns. But anyway, Dad ended up sitting up in bed with his back against the headboard, and he ended up shooting himself right through the mouth, and it exited, towards the rear of the head, and taking everything with it. Now, what's in her? I couldn't even imagine. I guess my little sister came running. My stepmom is just screaming. Then the little sister's screaming, and there's just all yeah. And the best I know, he wasn't dead. I don't know what that scene looked like, and I can promise you, my stepmom then and even now is in no state to share the details of what that would look like with the gunshot and the loud, and after all this turmoil all day. Shoots himself, lots of material exiting the backside, and yet he's alive. And you may say, well, how do you know he's alive? Well, if you listen carefully in one of the videos, even that guy is saying, hey, well, is he alive? And he's like, well, I would guess he is. They're putting him in a medevac. You know what I'm saying? They don't do that. So if we back up the story, he had to have been alive when they called the vac. He kind of had to still be alive when he was put in the ambulance to be driven up the street. And then the only thing I don't know is just how long that ambulance sat in all the business that was done in front of the chopper. And that may have been just, transferred from one gurney or something to another. Could have been. Don't know. It could have also been that they were there trying to stabilize him again. And then finally got him good enough to put him in the chopper and go. He was pronounced dead at the hospital. I don't know how much time was after, the helicopter landed, but he was pronounced dead at the hospital. And I'm just really trying to think if I've got anything, else about that. I feel like I don't. And since I don't, and I think it's also very, very interesting, I'm going to talk to you about what I said I wasn't going to talk to you about. So bear with me. So that day that we were in, when I say we, but the other people, me and the other patients were in the hospital or whatever, it was the same as any other day. I remember the time period was like Blind Melon or whatever, the song, No Rain was playing. That was super, super popular, and it must have been on the radio. I don't know how we would hear it, but we were, kind of jamming out to that and some other music. And we would always do that prior to watching the news. So we'd be in this room, and I don't know what you want to call it. It's kind of like a really big living room, lots of seating area around the perimeter. There was the TV on one end. That's where the radio sat, just to the left of it. And it was partially secluded, but also kind of open. And I, just like everywhere else, you always kind of sit in the same place you always sit. And I sat next to the table at the far back of the room, which also happened to be, at least for this day, was pretty much right next to whoever's in charge and is leading the group. So like I said, we're all in there, we're waiting, maybe we're allowed to go 15 minutes early and listen to music. I can't remember what the criteria was. But we're just having a good time. As much good time as you could have, with a bunch of people that are all broken and drugged up. Well, then the news started and we were watching it. And granted, you have to realize at this time I've probably done this, I would say 10 to 15 times. This is not new. A rhythm had already been established. But this night was different. I had never had this happen before. I started breaking down and sobbing for no reason in the group. I tried to get myself together. They were trying to talk to me, and console me and whatever, and it did no good. It did zero good. I just kept getting more and more, not hysterical. I don't know what word to use it when you're just a crying, maybe historical or anyway, like a fit. Like it was just came upon me, and that it was every part of me is just sobbing, but for no reason. It was so bad they ended up putting me in the padded room. They did things a little different back then, but they put me in the padded room so that I would be less likely, I guess, to hurt myself or someone else, even though I hadn't said that I would do that. And I was in there for a great time, and then I got angry. So there's like just a mattress in there and maybe a couple sheets and a pillow. It's about the only thing that was in the room. But I had tore all those off and I'd thrown them at walls, and I was really, really, really pissed off and still sobbing. Like, I don't know why. Well, at some point I ended up collapsing, if you will, on the mattress, sobbing and kind of almost giving up, if you will. And that's when one of the workers came in, and she came in and sat down on the floor with her back up against the wall next to the door. Door was shut, obviously, and locked. And we had a We had good conversation. We were trying to flesh out whatever that was. We never did figure it out, what was going on. I didn't end up going to supper with the other people because this whole fit was going on. They did get a tray, same meal, and they brought it back and fed it to me, and I ate very little of it. I might have had a taste or two of the mashed potatoes or something like that. And I don't know why that was. I normally was full. I'd eat my full plate, and this wasn't gross or anything like that. It's just I was still worked up. I couldn't do it. Well, I think enough hours had gone by, and it was late enough now to give you an idea that everyone else was in bed. And at these joints, that can usually be like 8 o'clock to maybe 10:30. So it's much later. I was the only one up. Lights were all dimmed down in the hallways and everything else. And they had me go ahead and go to my room. And this particular hospital had 2 beds to a room. And I was the bed closest to the door and closest to the bathroom. And most all of us slept with our door open, so there's quite a bit of light coming in the room. And I just remember that I had energy, if you want, or motion that needed to be released. And so I was kicking my leg. I don't normally do that. And I guess I got so carried away for so long that they gave me medication to be able to go to sleep. Yeah, that was kind of weird, It was like just a lot of reaction, like something wasn't right. Something bad had happened. And I didn't know, but I felt it. And I responded to it. The next morning, we get up as normal. I'm still not normal at this. I don't think I ate hardly any of my breakfast again. And it was odd that morning because there was like a lot of workers there. There was way more than normal. So I thought maybe they were going to have a meeting or something like that. Like people were coming in to have a morning meeting about new rules or something. Who knows? I don't know. And my psychologist, I remember, was in this room. And this room was interesting because I've never been in this room. But this room had those really tall accordion walls on 2 sides, like it could open up into a gym if it needed to be. There was a bean bag. There was a ridiculously small table and chairs in it, which is what she was sitting at and what I was motioned to sit at also. There's a lot of balls in like a white sack or something, a netting at the far end of the room. So I don't know, maybe that opened up into a rec type area. So I got my psychiatrist to the front of me, and there was probably 2 or 3 other people, which this is getting kind of weird, I still have no idea what's going on. And she basically just starts out and says, "Hey, how are you doing?" Told her what was going on, and then she told me that my father had passed away. There wasn't a long intro or anything. There was nothing sugar-coated about it. It was just that he passed away last night. And at first she didn't, give any. That was it. No, nothing. And I'm like, how? Because I thought, was he driving a car? Did he get hit walking or something? And she said it was by suicide. And of course, she still doesn't say how. And I don't know if in that moment I knew, but I feel like I did know. But if it was to be, I had to ask for it. And I know I didn't believe her at first. And somehow I was convinced that it was true. And I'll remember my response to this very day. And my words might be slightly wrong, but the idea is still the same. It was like, I guess we're not going to go camping again. Something like that. We weren't big campers. I mean, if we went camping again, like what I was saying, that might have been the second time. But what I knew is that him and my mom were getting a divorce. And all these weeks he was sharing a vision of what that would look like to be me and him again. Just like it was when I was being driven from Utah to Arkansas as a child. And I desired that. That's what I matched those two things up to. The divorce was going to equal that. Why? Because at that age, I don't remember. But to that very moment, I don't remember any abuse or trauma that was on me. I'm sure there was, but I don't. But I do remember what was after. And that sounded like a good place to start. The promise that he made, that this is what our life would look like. It's just going to be me and him together doing life. That's why I made the comment. I basically made the comment that the picture that he had left me, that he conveyed to me, that he promised to me, wasn't going to happen. I don't know. Oh, they did tell me that was the whole reason they waited to tell me that day, is because they wanted me to have. They knew about this all. They knew about it basically at the time of the news, or somewhere in there. But they kept it all mum's the word because, well, we'll get them to, eat supper, one good meal, or breakfast, another good meal before we tell them, which was a good plan because I didn't eat crap after that. How do you? You don't. But looking back, I'll never forget the way that I felt that night when it started at the news and carried on till I could no longer keep my eyes open because of the meds. The only way I've ever been able to explain that, since it was right at the time he was, whatever, is that he was flying over and saying goodbye. And there's so much filth on him from the event and his life and his past. It wrecked my soul during that amount of time. That's what I think it is. It lines up. I mean, they absolutely had to be going, whoa, this is very interesting. He's like freaking out and it lines. We just got the call. He doesn't even know and he's freaking out and da-da-da. Yeah, I think it was best to put that in with this same video. A lot of unanswered questions. There's still a lot of unanswered questions. It's just you start making peace with what you don't know. That's really what it comes down to. You make peace with what you don't know. You quit trying to chase the answer. Thanks for hanging in there with me. And to my future self that watches this, thank you for making the recording.